All right, we will pick up from where we left off, and hopefully they don't kick us off again. So, yes, the PPP program is now closed out, and unless we get a second bite at the apple, which I think we will get, but we don't know what the parameters are going to be on that. The forgiveness platform, which now is going to be an important aspect, has been rolled out to the lenders at the end of July, and SBA is starting to accept lender decisions / applications on a 10, although I have not seen a lender yet to actually have the platform up and running. Different operations we have are with 2 different banks, and neither one of those are up. And I know of 2 other ones, larger banks, that are not up and running again. One aspect of that is that they're waiting for further directions of the SBA, as they keep hearing that there may be changes and simplifications coming, especially for under $150,000 loans, that they may be even simplified process of doing the loan forgiveness. Hopefully that's so, because I do see that a lot of people are going to have problems even with the simplified, easy form forgiveness. But we'll talk a little bit about that. First, to say again, remind sole proprietors, most easy of all, because it's the loan amount to be put on the easy form application once you have actually spent the money on yourself. So then you just submit your loan amount on the appropriate line on the application and submit it once it's up to submit, and it's done. Sole proprietors are easy. They did that pretty well. So I just want to remind everybody about that. So current program forgiveness outside for everybody. I was just going to say. Yes, Tony. No, we are doing our bi-weekly. That's why you got kicked out. So we are on that right now, Tony. Okay, no problem. Okay. That was Tony asking about why we kicked him off. So.
And then deleted his meeting.
Yes. So be aware, check with your lender, see when they're opening up, and remember to actually do the application for forgiveness. That will be in portal to input and upload. And you will have to do the application. What I've been told from a large bank that we deal with is that they are not going to have a calculation platform. They're going to have a platform where you tell them what the calculations are and submit the backup. And if you remember, to most people, I've sent out the calculation format, and you can, if you Google Chris Carlsson PPP videos, you're going to get to a YouTube channel where that is kind of a little bit more condensed format where it goes through that. And if you email me, either to Monmouth or to my email address, I will send out the calculation format again. And I looked the other day to see if there were new frequently asked questions, which translates actually into SBA directions, regulations. And there were 2 new ones when you read through that, and it was specifically for the forgiveness aspect. For S-Corps and LLCs, owner, employees, and family health insurance, not an eligible expense. And that was one of those late arriving changes that has been talked about, and then it was actually done. I know for those of us who have S-Corp and LLCs, Now we feel fortunate that we're actually doing 24 weeks and not 8, because that could have been a difficult issue. And what was clarified in that last FAQ was also that when they are talking about business interest on mortgages, they are not talking about only real estate mortgages. They're also talking about on all loans that are secured. It's for the line of credits are secured with AR and possibly other assets. It's unclear, and I think you have to look at that and see how close you are and how much over you are, if you're going to need it or not. But it is clear that if you have equipment leases and if you have equipment financing, or you have other term loans that have an interest, that is eligible. It's not just real estate. So any term loans is for sure. Interest on line of credits that are secured, maybe. So to go back to the calculation format that we have, what we are now in a position that in a state of precision in the timeline is that we're going to have now to start figuring out where are we in actually arriving at our full forgiveness. And in the calculation format that I sent out, it tracks of how far you are in terms of percentage to full forgiveness, and where you will be based on the week you're in now and at 24 weeks. That is a reminder to go back to that and do the expense tracker and see where you are. Now let's go in and talk a little bit about, let's make that bigger, about how we get to utilize the easy form rather than the big 35-page mastodon and have the shorter one instead. So to qualify for the easy form, there are 3 boxes. The first box, as I talked about before, is the sole proprietor. It's automatic. You can check that box, take a loan amount to put on the first line of the cash compensation for the easy form, and you're kind of done. For those of us who have employees and are not sole proprietors, then we have box 2 and box 3. In box 2, then we're talking about reduction of compensation to employees. And we make ourselves eligible for the easy form by not having reduced compensation for any employee, by more than 25%. And we do not have a reduction in the number of employees and no reduction in average paid hours per week. This is all in the calculation format that I sent out. So you shouldn't have to do this in a calculator and manual or some ad hoc Excel format. So the reduction in compensation, that is by 25%, that is compared, covered period compared to the first quarter of 2020. Now the other ones, that is either the last week of the covered period up until 12/31 compared to 1/1/20. And there is an arrow pointing to 1/1/20 here, because by now you really should have gotten with your payroll company and or your bookkeeper to get the information for 1/1/20, to get the payroll information for 1/1/20 so you know how many employees you had. Then you know what you need to target. So to qualify for this, let's say that you had, pick the number, 11 employees on 1/1/20. And right now you're running 10. Hire somebody for 2 hours next week and make that then your last, or whenever the last week is. this is kind of one of the practical things. Don't fall one short in your last week of the covered period. Make sure that you make this. It's an easy way of looking at things. Look at the number of employees, 1-1, and then in your last week of the covered period, make sure that you get to that number. In one of our operations, we actually pay some of the commission salespeople on a monthly basis. So when we ran it, we were actually 3 people short. Like, how could this be? Oh, it's that issue. So now we're going to make the last week of the covered period, the week where we paid the monthly salespeople. The box 3 is unable to operate at the same level of business as before the crisis. We have interpreted that as the revenues on our P&L, that full months falling in the covered period compared to the same last year. So in our case, that would be May, June, July, and August if we need to go all the way there. So we do that for 20 and 19, and revenues are less. We actually qualify by doing box 3. That may be the easier for everybody to qualify for the easy form. So you should be getting with your bookkeeper, CPA, get the payroll reports, get the revenue reports that you need, because you're going to need it. Otherwise, you cannot do the PPP forgiveness application. Now, there is one aspect of this whole thing about forgiveness, and that is that it's clear in the law that the money we got, the PPP money that are now going to be forgiven, were not taxable. However, the treasurer in the IRS came out and said, well, that is so. On the other hand, we think that the expenses that you use the money to pay, use the PPP money to pay, are also not deductible. I.e., that translate into, they would say that the reporting you do and saying that you have $100,000 or $1 million of forgivable expenses, that would actually not be deductible in 2020 taxes. Now, there's been a lot of things written about that, and there was an article in Forbes last night that went through that, and they think that Congress is actually going to step in and put the treasury in its place. Hopefully so, because it's kind of ridiculous. And depending on where we are in the country, many of us would be taxed at 40% of what we got, in effect. However, Forbes is also saying, one of their tax guys is saying that, well, if that fails, we think that at least the more aggressive-minded CPAs are thinking that that law that they're referring to is very debatable, and they know that they're going to have clients who are going to say, no, we're going to submit our taxes as if they are tax deductible, go on with life and take the fight if it comes. For most of us in today's world, IRS is not auditing a whole lot of folks. So I know what I'm going to do. I can't tell anybody else what they should do, but I don't feel like paying taxes on this piece. And it couldn't be that they actually want to give out this money just to collect back 40% of it. Makes no sense. So when we talk about payroll reports, we have gone through this before. And again, you can see this on PPP videos where we go through what we need. But you do need payroll reports for first quarter, for your covered period, last week of the covered period, week of 1/1/20, the payroll period covering that. Same for the week of 2/15 and the week of 12/31/20 if you go that far. And if you need to go that far to get the full-time employee or the number of employees and those kind of things. Revenues, we talked about that, covered period versus the same period last year. And the only thing we can do, none of us are running P&Ls and financials in stub periods. So it's going to be from the first of the month to end of a month within our covered period. And another reminder to apply to the forgiveness. There's nothing automatic about it at this point. Everybody's going to have to apply. And we have up to 10 months after we are saying that our covered period ends. And we have between 8 and 24 weeks for a covered period. And then when we say if it ends at the end of August, then we have 10 months from the end of August to actually submit an application for forgiveness. Here it's an old picture I have here, just reminding you that don't rush into it. Make sure that you get your full forgiveness. And also don't wait for too long. There are 5 million companies that got PPP loans. They're all going to rush to CPAs to get this done. So there's going to be a backlog. So I wouldn't recommend waiting for too long, but also don't rush into it. Another reason to actually not wait for too long is that who knows what SBA are going to come up with in terms of regulations. And if you apply for the PPP, you're not subject to regulations after that, if you apply for the forgiveness. So let's talk a little bit about what we talked about other times. What if I'm short? What if we got the money late, we don't have 24 weeks, and I haven't had a chance to have a whole lot of employees, so I don't have the money yet to forgiveness. And here again, somebody talk about strategics, disclaimer. I'm making no ethical or moral judgment or legal judgment on this. These are things that, in some cases, we are looking at, and what can be done from a strategic perspective. No doubt that we can expand our covered period. If we got the money late, we don't have 24 weeks till the end of the year, we can expand the period by pulling in a front end of it and saying that we are paying the first week from what was earned a week prior. And then when we get to the last week, we can actually say that it was earned in the last week and pay the following week. That will also count, in effect, adding a week to what we do. Track your expenses. I did send out an expense tracker and a calculation format. Here's my email address. If you need it again, just email me. I'll send it out, and maybe I'll send it to you, Claire, and you can send it out to the participants. Because that will allow you to track and see where you are in the process. So you want to get to 100%, a little bit above, so that you don't, it looks good, because you never know what the bank or the lender is going to look at. And here, then, we also have the concept of creating eligible expenses. Again, this is in case you came late to the table getting the money, you don't have 24 weeks, or it's been really slow, you didn't have the employees, and now you have to look at what can you do. You can hire a spouse, pay, and then the spouse, you can take that money and reinvest it in the companies and put the cash back. Prepay wages take back later. Just make sure that you do it in a employee legal way, that they can't come back and claim later that you can't take the money back. I had prepay all employees retirement benefit here, and that is now in doubt, and I think that that's one of the aspects of why the banks haven't actually put the platform up yet. You could fit in another health insurance payment because it's based on actual cash being paid out. So you can time your covered period so you get an extra payment in. Same thing with rent and utilities and those kind of things. Time it, if you're short, time it so you get as much as possible into your covered period. Possibly temporarily convert outside expenses for like a 1099 into an employee. There's nothing that says that you cannot do that. Move up a payday. If you're close, if you are off by a day or something, pay a day early. So, do we have any questions, Claire?
All right, I'll unmute you. There are two questions. So the first one is, can you add me to the email chain for the expense tracker? So yeah, that's no problem, Barbara. We are going to send it out to everyone after this. And then we have from Laurie, can you please clarify when our covered period begins? I have been out of work since March. I'm assuming from April 1st till now is not yet 24 weeks, but I did not get the money until July. Do we count the weeks starting when we received the money or when we needed the money?
The covered period starts the day you got the funding. Then that's when it formally starts. Then you can elect to start counting payroll in the next first payroll period after you got the funding. But it starts on the day you got the funding, and then it stretches to 24 weeks or 1231, whichever comes first. Orders. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, go ahead. Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read. Are there still banks, companies, are there still banks / companies still doing the PPP? Every time I look, it seems that they are not. No, they stopped on 8/8. 8/8 was the last day they did PPP. And again, it may come a second bite at the apple. I am using PPP for guaranteed payments to partners who are working. Which box do I check on the easy form, 1, 2, or 3? If you are just partners and no employees, I believe that you check box 1. If you have employees, you're going to have to deal with box 2 or 3. For the covered period start date, does the day you got the payment mean the day the check hit your bank account? Yes, it does.
It's not the day you got told you got the approval?
No.
Okay.
It's the day of funding. And you mentioned check, which is not often nowadays that happens. Most of us got the direct deposit into our bank account, and that is the day that this date starts. If there was actually check mailed by snail mail, I would assume that it's the mailing date that is the actual funding date in that case. But for most of us, I would say 90% probably, we got the direct deposit, that's the date that the covered period starts. Okay,
All right, there's no more questions.
no more questions. And so at this point, kind of not a big point of keep going with standardized every 2 weeks type thing. So we're going to do them ad hoc, and we're also going to do other webinars in terms of cash flow and, and also turnaround of companies and those kind of things. So we can blend it in there. And if there's something big happens, we'll do a webinar. There is another question. Rumor has it that there may be blanket forgiveness with no forms. Any news on this? Rumor has it that there may be a blanket forgiveness of loans less than 150,000, and no forms is a misnomer. It's no forms with calculations and things like that. It is what is said that their discussion is that it's a form in which you certify that you qualify for the forgiveness. That is what I hear that they may come up with. And hopefully that's the case, so we don't have to deal with this. However, I would tell everybody that don't count on it. Get with your payroll people and your bookkeeper to get the reports that you're going to need. Waiting too long, they may be bogged down just like April 15.
There's another question. Are there any other types of loans or funding that you can get as a small business minority owner?
Yes, the other types of SBA funding is still open. They have not shut down the 7A program or anything like that. That's still there. Go to the SBA side. You can even go to the disaster side where it actually has links to the other programs. And they're not bad programs. They are good programs. And what I hear is that they are pretty speedy in getting through the kind of things. Now, I'm aware of 3 or 4 people who have gotten 7A loans here, while they also got PPP loans. There are also state programs. Go on the state websites, like in New Jersey, I think it's njeda.com, that outlines the state programs. Some counties also have programs. The newest one, I think, is the one that has to do with lease, giving grants for leases. I'm an ETA for when SBA give advice will come from the SBA to the lenders. They can load the forms. That advice had gone out. It is now up to the lenders to actually get the platform online. It's now the lenders who are not putting them up. It's either because their IT hasn't been finished, but I am suspecting that it's more that they're waiting for final directions as to what the program is really going to be.
I have a question that's kind of relevant to that, right? So what would happen if the lender isn't ready and it's after the 8 weeks of when you got funded?
You have 10 months from whichever week you pick. If you elect to pick 8 weeks, 10 months after the 8 weeks to say, this is my last week.
Got it. Okay. If you're the sole proprietor and maintained an income until now, do you pay yourself the average salary amount from the next pay period from the time of disbursement, or use the money to pay yourself once the business income decreases?
That is a good question. I would just keep paying myself. So the money goes out of the bank account in case the lender is going to ask to see that money came out of a bank account. I would do that. I wouldn't wait until a last payment or something like that. Remember, you can always pay yourself and put the money back into the company. So from a cash perspective, it should not matter. Are the EIDL loans still available? Yes, they are. And I think that they're going to be available without an end date, but it's until the funding from Congress runs out. Once that runs out, they cannot lend any more money. But at this point, they do have money at EIDL to lend. No, I don't know when the final guidance will be received. You would think that they would have it by now, but I also think that they're looking at the whole scope of things. Remember, there are people who got $5,000 or $2,000 of PPP money, and there are people who got 10 million, 50 million, 30 million. So they are giving guidance, trying to give guidance to all of this at the same time, which obviously it's a whole different ballgame if you got 10 million than if you got $10,000. That's why they're looking at the $150,000 limit. And I'm guessing that they're going to be a concentration of audits or everything over 2 million. That's what they've said before.
And then did you answer the final guidance question? When will the final guidance question be received? Any idea? Did you answer that one, Chris?
I think I did, and I have no idea. I think that they're waiting. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do at different levels of the loans. And I think that we can keep seeing guidance coming out, which are then going to apply for people who have not done the PPP forgiveness application yet.
Does anybody have any more questions that they want to put in? Good.
All right. No, thanks, folks. It's been a pleasure doing these webinars. And when there is development, especially if there's a second bite at the apple, we will contact you, we will send out, and we will probably do a webinar at that point based on what that program will see.
Lois, you can see this on YouTube. We'll get it uploaded and put onto YouTube within a few days. All right, thank you everybody so much. Maybe, who knows, maybe we'll be lucky. Maybe when the next update comes out, we'll be able to do an in-person as well as a webinar. Who knows, we can only hope. So I just want thanks everybody for participating, for the newcomers today. Thank you, I hope it was helpful, and for the for our regular attendees. It's been a pleasure. We do still have webinars. We have them every other Friday. Although no, actually we're going to start changing them to Tuesday. So just keep an eye on our website and you'll be able to see the webinars that we have up and coming, and register for those. Don't forget, if you are looking for a SCORE mentor, that's what we do. We offer free business mentoring services to small businesses. Chris and I are with the Monmouth County chapter, but we are a national organization, so there are plenty of SCORE chapters all around the country. We are supported by the SBA. So if you're looking for a mentor and you need business help, business guidance or advice, or just someone to bounce ideas off, whatever it is you need, check our website at monmouth.score.org. I think it's monmouth.score.org. Is that right, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, monmouth.score.org. And you'll see a selection of mentors there. So, you know, don't be shy. It's what we're here to do. We're here to help small businesses. So please go ahead and request a mentor if you're looking for one. And on that note, thank you, everybody. This will be available on YouTube within a few days. And any questions, again, reach out, request a mentor. Thank you, and have a good Wednesday.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good Wednesday.